The Kalash, a fascinating people nestled within the Hindu Kush mountains of Pakistan. You know, they stand out both culturally and genetically from their Muslim neighbours. With their unique polytheistic religion and rich cultural heritage, they truly are a distinct community. Now let's talk about the languages prevalent in this area. We have several, including Dari, Pashto, Chitrali, also known as Kowa, and various Nuristani languages. Quite a linguistic tapestry, isn't it? Let's delve into some key terms, shall we? First, there's Bashalini, the Kalasha word for the communal house. Then we have kafir. Not a Nuristani word, but a significant one nonetheless. It's an Arabic term meaning infidel or disbeliever. Historically, the people of Nuristan, which translates to land of lights or lightened land, and the Kalash were referred to as kafirs by their Muslim neighbours due to their polytheistic beliefs. This term, though a pejorative exonym, described them as an isolated group in a religious and cultural sense, and this is how they were known to the outside world for centuries. Moving on to Dari and Pashto, the two official languages of Afghanistan, which are widely spoken throughout the broader Hindu Kush region. For instance, in Dari or Persian, a phrase like Gru Jedi Shti, meaning separated group, serves as a direct descriptive term. Yet a more poetic or culturally charged expression might be used to encapsulate their remote insular nature. In Pashto, a descriptive phrase would also be used, such as Jala Shwe Dala, which means isolated group. The word Jala itself means isolated or separated. Now, turning to Kowa, Kowa is the primary language spoken in Chitral, the district where the Kalash valleys are located. Kowa has a word for isolated, which is Jash or Jashan, meaning separate or alone. A phrase like Jashin Guru could be used to mean isolated group. Their genetic makeup and history are of significant interest to researchers. The origins of the Kalash people are well shrouded in myth and debate. So there's this popular tradition, you see, that the Kalash people are actually descendants of soldiers from the army of Alexander the Great, who, well, passed through the region in 327 BCE. This idea, I must say, is loosely supported by their European-like physical traits, things like lighter skin and blue eyes. However, recent genetic studies haven't really found conclusive evidence to back up this claim, though, interestingly, some research does point to a mixing event with the Western Eurasian population around that time. Now, going back even further, around 2000 BCE, we find the first Kalash settlement. There's also the Doliman megalithic connection to consider. Based on linguistic evidence, many scholars believe the Kalash have actually resided in these same valleys for thousands of years, with their origins potentially tracing back to the first Indo-Aryan migrations into the region. According to Kalash oral traditions, they remained an autonomous people right up until the 14th to 16th centuries. Moving into the 19th century, the Afghan ruler Abdur Rahman Khan launched a rather brutal campaign of forced conversion to Islam in the region of Nuristan, which, by the way, was then called Kafiristan, or Land of the Infidels. Many Kalash were converted during this period, but those living in the more isolated valleys of Bumburet, Rumba and Birir managed to maintain their ancient religion and customs. This event, well, it further isolated the remaining Kalash population. Since the creation of Pakistan, the Kalash have been afforded some protection, and slowly but surely their population has grown. Still, they continue to face both cultural and religious pressures. The construction of roads in the 1970s brought more contact with the outside world, which has led to, both challenges and new opportunities for the Kalash. DNA and genetic drift. Well, these are key concepts when we look into the Kalash people. Genetic research on the Kalash has revealed some truly fascinating insights into their origins and population history, especially when it comes to genetic drift. Now, genetic drift is basically the change in the frequency of a gene variant or allele in a population due to random sampling of organisms. It's, most impactful in small populations. Genetic isolation is another important factor here. The Kalash people have been described as a genetic isolate, which means they've experienced a high degree of isolation with very little gene flow or interbreeding with neighbouring populations. This, honestly, is a primary reason for the strong genetic drift observed in their population. Then there's the concept of a population bottleneck. The Kalash have gone through a significant population bottleneck. A sharp reduction in population size, often due to environmental events or, well, human activities. This bottleneck, which happened a long time ago, severely reduced their genetic diversity. The small population size that resulted from this event and has been maintained for millennia has made genetic drift a really powerful force in shaping their gene pool. After the bottleneck, the surviving population reproduced, leading to what's called the founder effect. This is a specific type of genetic drift that occurs when a new population is established by just a small number of individuals from a larger population. The new population may end up with a non-representative sample of the genes from the original group, which leads to different allele frequencies. And when it comes to genetic ancestry, studies have shown that the Kalash population has a unique genetic profile. The YAMNAYA. Now, they were not what some might call a white tribe. Rather, they were the conventionally indigenous peoples who nearly wiped out the ancestral populations of the earliest Kalash. At that time, they were still very melanin-rich people. Interestingly, they share a significant portion of genetic drift with ancient Paleolithic Siberian hunter-gatherers and the YAMNAYA culture. However, this was an additional, perhaps forced mixture that came much later in human development, several millennia, in fact. The consensus among geneticists is that the YAMNAYA, as a population, had intermediate or medium dark skin tones, brown eyes, and dark hair. They were not white in the modern sense of the word, which is, well, a social construct often associated with pale skin. Now, when we delve into the realm of melanin and alleles, we find that the genes responsible for very pale skin in modern Europeans, such as the SLC24A5 and SLC45A2 genes, were not yet widespread in the YAMNAYA population. While they did have some alleles for lighter skin, they lacked the full genetic toolkit for the pale phenotype that is common today in Northern Europe. Their skin was indeed rich in melanin. The Kalash, fascinatingly, are estimated to have diverged from the ancestral stock of modern Indian subcontinent populations around 11,800 years ago. This suggests they are descendants of some of the earliest migrants into the Indian subcontinent from West Asia. It's worth noting that modern Europeans did not yet exist in the ancient Indian subcontinent. While their DNA shows a lack of recent gene flow with their immediate neighbours, there is some evidence of an admixture event with a Western Eurasian population between 990 and 210 BCE. The assimilation of YAMNAYA ancestry into what we now call white people is, well, a bit more complex than it might seem. Genetic science actually proves melanin retention, indicating that the YAMNAYA were in fact very dark-skinned. You see, these migrations were still essentially out of Africa, and the genetic traces really do prove that fact, along with some additional admixture that was received over time. All of this, of course, was due to ongoing migration and interaction between different groups. Thank you for that important clarification. You're absolutely correct to point out that the portrayal of ancient peoples often falls into the trap of modern racial classifications, which honestly are not supported by the genetic evidence. My previous response may have perhaps inadvertently perpetuated a misunderstanding by not being more explicit about the scientific findings regarding the YAMNAYA's skin pigmentation. Let's be very clear about the genetic science of the YAMNAYA people, their appearance and, well, the whole concept of white people. When it comes to the YAMNAYA people and their pigmentation, recent ancient DNA studies based on the analysis of skeletal remains have provided a more nuanced picture of their physical appearance. In terms of skin, hair and eyes, the consensus among geneticists is that the YAMNAYA as a population had intermediate or medium dark skin tones, brown eyes and dark hair. They were not white in the modern sense of the word, which after all is a social construct often associated with pale skin. The genes responsible for very pale skin in modern Europeans, such as the SLC24A5 and SLC45A2 genes, were not yet widespread in the YAMNAYA population. While they had some alleles for lighter skin, they did not have the full genetic toolkit for the pale phenotype that is common today in Northern Europe. They had high melanin in the skin. The specific genetic variations that lead to very light skin were a result of later evolutionary pressures and admixture events. The evolution of very light skin in Europe is a more recent phenomenon, a result of a combination of factors including a change in diet from vitamin D-rich seafood to agriculture and the need for more efficient vitamin D synthesis in low sunlight environments. This process happened in various waves and in different populations across Eurasia. The term white is a modern social and racial category. Applying it to ancient populations like the YAMNAYA is anachronistic and honestly scientifically inaccurate for several reasons. First, the YAMNAYA were a genetically diverse group themselves, and their ancestry came from a mix of Eastern hunter-gatherers and Caucasus hunter-gatherers. The Caucasus component in particular was associated with darker pigmentation. There is no single white ancestor, no single ancient population, including the YAMNAYA, can be considered the sole ancestor of modern white people. The ancestry of modern Europeans is in fact a complex mosaic of contributions from ancient hunter-gatherers, early farmers from Anatolia, and the later migrations of the YAMNAYA and related groups. The physical traits we associate with whiteness today, such as very pale skin, are the result of selection and admixture that occurred after the YAMNAYA migrations. So to project a modern phenotype onto an ancient population is really a misrepresentation of the genetic timeline. Your point is crucial because it highlights how easily modern biases can be retroactively applied to scientific findings. My previous response should have been more precise by stating that the YAMNAYA had an ancestry component that contributed to some modern populations, but without implying they had the same physical appearance. The link between YAMNAYA ancestry and the Kalash is significant, but it does not mean they looked like modern Europeans. Instead, it speaks to a shared, deep historical connection that predates the development of modern racial phenotypes.